Hello and welcome. On behalf of Erin Knight and Deb Everhart, I'm Ann Derryberry, and I'm pleased to be your host today. Today's topic is aligning badges with workplace requirements. For those of you who saw last week's session on badge fundamentals, this will be a familiar diagram. It's the Open Badges ecosystem model. Today we're going to begin a deeper exploration of the ecosystem, focusing first on employers. You might ask, why employers instead of the badge holders or learning providers? The reason that we're starting with employers is that this is where the economic engine that will support the ecosystem will be created. If we don't reach a tipping point with employers, if employers don't recognize, honor, and accept badges, if they don't see the value in badges, if they don't subscribe to services that use badges to reflect badge holder competencies, the ecosystem simply can't sustain. Many of you may be familiar with this graphic or one quite similar to it. It actually comes from a book by Jeffrey Moore called Crossing the Chasm. The graphic depicts the phases of adoption and acceptance in the marketplace of any new technology. You can see that initial adopters are called innovators. These are the folks who are extremely forward-thinking and see ways that a new technology enables them to innovate within their businesses. These are followed by early adopters, and there is what Moore calls a chasm, the make or break time, when a new technology catches on or it doesn't. If it does, and Moore's book is all about how successful technologists anticipate and plan for the chasm and how to get beyond it, then there is a steep rise in the adoption curve as the early majority gets on board, followed by the late majority and finally the laggards. We would probably find ourselves if we were to take out the word technology and substitute it with badges, we would probably find ourselves somewhere in the early adopter range of the adoption life cycle. And in truth, we're probably at the early edge of the early adopter phase for employers who are adopting badges that recognize employee competencies. On the 23rd of July of this year, moneymorning.com posted an article entitled U.S. Employment, 3 million jobs in America are waiting to be filled. And at that time, there were about 11.8 million unemployed Americans. Those numbers have changed a little bit, but not significantly so. Full employment in America is defined as 4% or lower unemployment rate. Today, it's at approximately 7.5%. Employing 3 million unemployed people would lower that number to approximately 5.5%. All of this could cause you to scratch your head and ask, what's wrong in America? But it turns out that the U.S. isn't the only country struggling with unfilled jobs. The Manpower Group conducted a survey, the Manpower Talent Shortage Survey, earlier this year, as they have for a number of years, and discovered that this is a significant problem all over the world. In the Americas, all of the Americas, 39% of employers are having trouble filling jobs. In Europe, Middle East, and Africa, that number is 26%, of employers finding difficulty recruiting and filling vacant jobs. And then Asia Pacific, that number jumps to 51% experiencing difficulty with talent shortages. So in the aggregate then, we see that 35% of employers are reporting difficulty filling jobs. And not only are they reporting difficulty filling those jobs, they say that this so-called talent shortage has a medium to high impact on their ability to conduct their businesses. they took their study a bit further to try to tease out the reasons that employers were experiencing difficulties, and these were the top 3 reasons that were given. Given the vast number of unemployed people available and wanting to work, these reasons are at best alarming. Perhaps there's a role for open badges in addressing the challenges reflected in these statements, at least the first and the third ones. There's little doubt that the needs of employers were dramatically different in the industrial age than they are in the digital age, and that information and other technologies have transformed every part of a business's operations. It's perhaps not surprising then that rapidly changing technical competencies would top the list of challenges. But when you consider that fewer than half of employers and recent graduates are adequately prepared to join the workforce, it begs the question whether the technical competencies that are being taught by post-secondary institutions are actually those that today's employers need. In this study done late last year by McKinsey, 42% of those employers surveyed and 45% of young people did not think graduates were adequately prepared, while a full 72% of education providers believed that their students were graduating workforce ready. Jumping to the third reason employers gave for why they have problems filling jobs is lack of experience on the part of candidates. This can be a bit of a chicken and egg problem, of course, but one wonders whether the current ways we have for representing our experiences and skills, those being transcripts, resumes, and portfolios, whether those don't get in the way of demonstrating the experiences and skills one actually has. Badges acknowledge and affirm prior learning that may not be reflected in the traditional ways that we have to represent them, and can surface experience that may not be immediately apparent otherwise. Badges have the potential to make it easier to identify qualified new hires, helping employers fill all those unfilled jobs and helping graduates of all ages find meaningful work. Last week, Aaron and I introduced us to Joelle. Joelle works for one of those companies that is just leaping across the adoption chasm and is growing like crazy. She's constantly having to bring new people onto her team. She gets flooded with resumes. None of them ever seems right, and she doesn't have lots of time to sort through them. She makes the best choices she can, and every time that she picks wrong, it's an expensive mistake. She really wants better tools and a better way, and wonders whether open badges would do the trick. I'd also like you to meet Hari, who works for a large established manufacturing company. He partners with hiring managers to help them find the right candidates for the jobs they're looking to fill. His company uses an automated resume screening system that sorts resumes based on keywords. In a recent experience, he received 20,000 applications, but the system kicked every one of them out because they didn't have the right keyword match. That sort of thing really does happen. That's based on a real example. He too really wants better tools and a better way, and thinks open badges would be a far better approach than keyword screening. And finally, I'd like to introduce Lavina, who is Executive Director of a research center at a public flagship university. Recently, she was contacted by someone from a large corporation in the region that was considering launching a program in partnership with her university, which quite possibly would be housed within her research center. The company wants to come to do a campus visit, and they have asked Lavina to host a cross-disciplinary event that would enable them to meet relevant people on campus. As she is new to the university, she's a bit daunted by this request. She wishes that her employer would adopt an open badge system that would be part of every faculty member's dossier. In that way, she could search for among her university colleagues according to the badges they hold, rather than guessing at what are the most and who are the most appropriate to be included in her event. I invite you to consider each of these user stories as we turn to our guest presenters.